I watched both press conferences yesterday.
Not a lot there.
Neither one of these coaches, to no shocking development, is going to give an ounce of anything controversial.
Nothing at all. They know what they're doing. They know it's a big game. Everybody's smart at this point. Don't give any red meat.
I also think because of...
No Google me, bitch. I just win.
Yeah.
We beat top 25 teams from Kurt Cignetti yesterday.
Right. I think because of what happened in around, week 2, week 3, because of what happened to Mike Gundy, I think Cignetti, he was asked, one of his first questions was, the resources over at Oregon.
Yeah.
And he goes, I don't know what the resources are.
Which is the right answer because you don't know what the resources are.
Well, we do, but we don't.
We don't. We have no idea how much every player is making and what their total payroll is. We have a general idea, but we have no idea the specific number.
You can answer that question and say they have top-end resources. You don't have to dive into numbers. Yeah. We know they're top-end resources. We don't know specific numbers, to your point. We know they're great resources.
Yes.
But he wasn't playing that game. He goes, I don't know what the resources are. He moved right on.
Not putting that toe in the water, dude. I'm staying away from that one. Kurt Cignetti knows what he's doing at this point.
That's not what happened to Mike. That ain't going to happen to me.
I'm going to get fired in 2 weeks if I do that.
Here was Kurt Cignetti on Oregon and his team going against a team as talented as Oregon.
Well, you put together the best plan for your team that you think gives you the best chance to be successful. But I have confidence in our team. Right? They are big. They are athletic. They are a very good football team. We're a good football team.
He was also asked about the road noise of Autzen Stadium. They're coming off of a bye, but their last game was at Iowa.
Yes, it was.
It was a little bit of an ugly-ish game, but I can't believe I'm saying this out loud. Indiana might be a level of team that isn't overlooking Iowa, but it's like we have Oregon in 2 weeks, and Iowa's not great this year.
Well, Iowa also is a good defensive team. They can put you into a bit of a meat grinder, and you're in an uncomfortable game. It's on the road. That's college football. Every week you never know what you're going to get.
Well, he was asked about, hey, you're coming off of Iowa. Now you're going to Autzen, road noise. And here was what he had to say about that.
Well, I think any time you do something the second time, it helps that you've been through it one time before. And Iowa was, it was a sellout. It was loud. So to have that kind of preparation going into this game will help.
I saw some Duck fans on social media, which, every time these teams play, it becomes like a Twitter beefs between these random fan accounts. And someone was like, dude, if you think Iowa's going to prepare you for what Autzen's going to be.
You're waving at any kids in a hospital in Autzen, buddy.
We're trying to send you to a hospital, man.
It's not happening here, man. It's going to be very loud.
I do think, though, we've talked about this going into the Penn State game, right? Is noise is always going to be somewhat of a factor.
Yes.
But I also think after a certain point, noise is noise.
For sure it is. It also comes down to your execution and your leadership and your communication and what you put into place, right?
Yes.
The people have argued the whiteout at Penn State is one of the loudest environments, if not the loudest environment in all of college football. And how many pre-snap penalties did Oregon's offensive line have in that game?
None. The offensive lineman had none. It was only tight ends.
But then other teams will go on the road and you'll get constant false start, delay of games. You just, it depends on how prepared you are, how much time you've had to get ready for it, and what your plan is to handle it. Because you're going to go into an environment where you're not going to be able to talk to the person standing next to you. So you got to make sure you're on your P's and Q's. And Indiana is an experienced team. They've played in big environments. They were on the road at Ohio State last year. I know the team is slightly different. At Notre Dame for their playoff game, on the road at Iowa, which is one of the louder venues I would imagine in the Big Ten, although I've never been there before. So they've been through some of this stuff before. It just comes down to their ability to execute in that environment.
Well, one thing about Indiana that's interesting, and I guess I wasn't as aware of this until I watched his press conference. And again, not like they gave a lot in these press conferences yesterday. I think this is a massive game. I think it's really exciting. Think about the last time Indiana came to Oregon.
I was at the game.
That was a fun one.
Was not a fun one. They lost.
Well, no, I mean, it was nobody expected it to be the way
I was
it
at
went.
that game, too.
I was at that game. I was
Didn't Indiana return a kickoff?
Oregon had 7 turnovers in the game. They outgained them by 500 yards and turned the ball over 7 times, gave up a kickoff return
That's
for
what
a
I'm
touchdown.
saying. It was underrated. I was like, oh, my God.
And Indiana was terrible.
Not good.
And that was at the come-up of Oregon football. That was 2004, 2005, somewhere in that range.
So these teams don't play a lot, but one thing I didn't know about Cignetti's team is they're not audibles. They don't do audibling in their offense.
Not a lot of check with me at the line of scrimmage. They don't allow the quarterback to operate that way.
And so he talked about the not audibling because, the noise isn't going to get to you, and he talked about his offensive philosophy.
We've never been a check audible team, really, to be honest with you. Early on at JMU, maybe we'd send a play in, and he had to have a certain look, and he'd look to the sideline, but we quit doing that after year 2. We don't do a lot of it. We talk about doing it at times, and we'll see what this week brings.
So it's interesting, like maybe he throws that wrinkle in, even though he's kind of saying they don't do it. But if that noise is far louder than maybe they're expecting, and I don't know how you'd go into that game not expecting the loudest environment.
Sure.
I'd be curious to see if that changes at all for them, because it's those little tweaks and changes to a team when you don't do it that can throw you off a little bit and give an Oregon an advantage in the situation.
Right, or you get a certain look that you've game planned for and you have an audible in place to beat that certain look that you're getting. You got to be able to execute that at the line of scrimmage and be able to communicate it to everybody on the field. That gets it back to the point of the noise conversation. This has all of a sudden turned into a very exciting game. I think Curt Cignetti brings a lot of juice because of his ability to talk trash. He has turned Indiana into one of the more respected programs in the country at this point, which is a shocking thing to say as of 2.5, 3 years ago. Hell, even a year ago at this point, nobody was still talking about Indiana. So to get them here, it's awesome for the Big Ten. It's desperately what they needed. Penn State has fallen on their face. Michigan isn't quite a title contention. We know Ohio State and Oregon are probably the two best teams in the conference. And it's interesting to think about, like, what do we say about Indiana if they win this game? Like, if Indiana goes into Autzen and wins this game,
you're going into title contention.
Like, you're in the mix
for them,
of one of the best teams in the country and having a legitimate shot at winning a national championship. And I'm sure if Oregon blows them out, it'll be, well, Indiana wasn't that good anyways, because that's what we did to Penn State. But that's the game that we play. I think it all comes down to one guy only. What does Mendoza play like? That is the only question I have for this game of how tight is it? How competitive is it? Does Indiana have a chance? He completed barely over 50% of his passes at Iowa, but then against Illinois at home, he was at like 93% and threw 5 touchdown passes. So is there somewhere in between? Is he one or the other? Is he going to be able to come in and execute and complete passes at a high percentage? If he can do that, Indiana can absolutely stick around in this game.
Well, here's Dan Lanning at his press conference. He was asked, they've played Mendoza when he was at Cal a couple years ago, and now they're getting him again. And Lanning was asked about what's different between Mendoza they saw and the Mendoza that is at Indiana.
Well, I think he's surrounded by some really talented players, and I think again has a really clear understanding of a scheme. This offense, when you watch it, it has an identity. You're going to see the same play ran a couple times. The window dressing might be different, but they know how to run this play. It's not about inventing new offense. It's about running it better than you and executing it better than you, and they do a really good job of that. And then they do enough of that to where you think, okay, this is what it's going to be, and then they throw a wrinkle in there, and it is different. So he's playing in an offense that clearly has an identity, and he's playing around really good players.
So very complimentary, but also the growth of Mendoza, who I kind of just like saw that, and I went, that's the answer, and then why did I dismiss that idea? To your point, stats-wise, but I still think he's
better than what they had last year. There's no doubt about that.
Oh, you think he is better?
I do think he's than Curtis Rourke. I think he's way better than Curtis
Rourke. Had a nice,
he was
surprising
good.
season for Indiana.
He wasn't in the conversation as a potential number 1 pick in the NFL.
He also couldn't move like this kid can move.
No, he could not. And I think both these quarterbacks are identical, right? Like you can look at Mendoza getting drilled by Oregon a couple of years ago. I think they won the game 63-19 or something. They killed him, and he wasn't very good. What did Dante Moore look like at UCLA? Mm-hmm. Both these quarterbacks are identical, right? They evolve, they develop, they get better, and now they have more talent around them.
I know we'll ask Conley about this game, and we'll have more as the week goes on, but I wanted to ask you, do you think Penn State – I'm kind of curious how much of the Penn State tape Cignetti takes away and says, are Mendoza's legs going to be utilized more in this game?
Could be.
Because I wondered a little bit, like, was Aller trying too hard – to look the part, whereas could he have run a little more? Could they put him in different situations or looks where using the legs at the quarterback position or throwing on the run even, it just presents such a tough wrinkle to defend.
It absolutely does. He hasn't used his legs a ton so far this year.
He has not.
He's one of those guys that He is kind of comparable to Aller in that point where, like, you wouldn't think of him as a runner.
Right.
Because the numbers don't really back it up. And then you watch a game and he has a nice scramble and you're like, why don't you do that more often?
Mm-hmm.
You have the ability to use your legs. I mean, what is he, 6'6", 220? Like, his strides
He's 6'5", 225.
I mean, his strides are 4 yards, dude. Every time he's taking a step, like, it's 2 steps to a first down. So he has the ability to do it. I would imagine the +1 run game is something that they will utilize. I'll use Oregon as the example here, actually.
Yeah.
Dante Moore has run a little bit early in the season. Not a ton. Every time he scrambled, we were like, please don't scramble because you're taking hits you shouldn't take, and he took some big ones early in the year. They used way more quarterback run game against Penn State than they have in any other game. In a lot of short yardage situations and 4th down and overtime, what'd they do? Hike it to him, let him run forward for 2 yards.
You use that pass rush, you bring it in,
sure.
You know what I mean?
Some of it with quarterback draw, some of it's designed, some of it's not designed. But
right.
I think it's the point of that was their biggest game of the year. They knew they needed every card in the deck in order to get the job done, and quarterback run game was a part of it. This is Indiana's biggest game of the year. This is the toughest opponent to this point that has been on their schedule, and it's going to take everything in their Rolodex in order to get a win. So to answer your question, I wouldn't be surprised at all if they run him a ton.
Well, and I think Oregon is probably going to go in more prepared for it, right? Because if you go look at his numbers, like, he is somebody that I kind of misremember at Cal in some ways. Like, I think of him as a slightly more mobile guy.
He can move really well, but he doesn't run the ball a ton.
The numbers don't bear it out. He had 87 carries his last year at Cal in 2024 for 105 yards.
Now, some of that is probably cooked by sacks because I think he took a lot of sacks. So that's
I think that's
in
a fair point.
But,
he did have a 50-yard run in one of the games that year, whereas this year, obviously protection matters, to your point on the sack numbers. I kind of hate that, by the way, the sack, how it changes
the rush
totals.
It's a dumb thing. It should not.
He's had 30 carries so far this year for 102 yards, so his average is higher. And I've a couple games that I've seen with Indiana, because I haven't watched every second of every Indiana game.
They played Indiana State, Kennesaw State, and Old Dominion.
Well, like the Indiana State game is a good example. He utilized those lanes when he got them. So it's something to keep an eye on. As he said, not the most mobile dude, but I think he's presented those opportunities. If the rush is coming up, he steps up in the pocket. It's just something to think about going into the matchup.
I mean, look, I don't want to oversimplify it, but I think the entire game comes down to him. Oregon, to me, is more talented at almost every other position on the field.
Cignetti basically said as much yesterday.
Look, Indiana has got some great guys.
Yeah.
They got some good players. There's no doubt they're a very good football team, but they need their quarterback to play. Like, I don't think they can get away with winning if he plays like he played at Iowa.
I agree.
I don't see them pulling out a dub or even hanging in this game. But if he comes out and he's sharp and he's running and he's on point and the completion percentage is high and they're moving the chains, they can stick around in this game.